Hi, I'm Tim. Join me in this video as we discuss a very interesting comment on California and drone law enforcement from somebody who knows. Let's get to it. As drones become more and more a part of everyday life, commercial drone activity is forecast to be a $30 billion industry in 2023. The FAA has been working over the years to figure out how to achieve their ultimate goal of full integration of drone to unmanned aircraft systems into the national airspace system with manned aircraft. It's a huge discussion, lots of information, videos out there, but one of the aspects as the FAA grapples with how to handle drone traffic is the intersection of drones flying in the national airspace system, which is what the FAA has to work with. However, drones by their nature, because they're often low flying in neighborhoods, perhaps taking pictures, there will be an intersection of drones flying in the national airspace system with local law enforcement, with the police. Maybe a neighbor calls somebody, they hear or see a drone. The first thing the person is going to do is call law enforcement. So law enforcement comes out there, they may or may not see the drone, they meet the person making the request. What are the rules of the road? Who does what to whom over a drone sighting between the FAA and local police? This is an interesting problem or problem that is going to be around for a long time. It is not well understood who does what to whom. Remember, when the FAA asks the local police to do something, they don't provide any money or specialized training, perhaps a few videos on what to do, essentially collect a bunch of information to see what the FAA may or may not do on that activity. Local police departments are busy enough as they are with 24/7 operations, just keeping the peace in local areas. This additional tasking is not welcome by many local police departments. So what do you do? First of all, let's take a look at how the FAA views this from their FAA website. We are now at the FAA website. Note the mission statement, providing the safest, most efficient aerospace system in the world. Notice the latest news. There's always a couple items on drones. Here is a 2023 FAA Drone Symposium. Note on the symposium, remote ID compliance ready. Remote ID is a huge focus of the FAA. So we go to drones and we go down to public safety. And this is what the FAA is saying to law enforcement when they're called to deal with drone situations. A series of instructions. Now we can click on this link, understanding the authority, handling sightings reports, handling complaints involving drones, law enforcement resources, video series, penalties, and they even have a little law enforcement checklist on what police should do, detect, report, etc., to gather information and start coordinating with the FAA to include FAA contact points for further investigations. I did a video, I'll show you the thumbnail here, the link will be in the description, called You Are Flying Illegally. What do you do if somebody says, hey, you're flying illegally? What are the options? I do research on these videos, I put them out there, but it's always fascinated me to read the comments to see what people say about this, good, bad, or ugly. And I recently got a comment from the You're Flying Illegally video, which I think offers a lot of insight to where we are, where we're going on the intersection of the FAA and law enforcement for drone sightings. And so I'm reading from this from this viewer's comments. Tim, fantastic points. I am a recently retired commander from a large city agency in the state of California. Prior to my retirement, I, along with many other law enforcement officers from California, attended a roundtable discussion regarding mainly recreational drones in the state of California. This meeting was open to all agencies, although very few were in attendance. The FAA was present, and they gave pretty much the same information you are talking about here. I think the consensus is this: departments, police departments, do not have the time, nor do we have the proper service training to enforce most of these FAA mandates, especially the upcoming remote ID. Agencies are having a hard enough time retaining and recruiting officers these days. Every police officer that would be required to enforce FAA mandates would need to attend in-service training in regards to enforcement. It's the same thing like a law enforcement officer being qualified to run radar. Not all officers are qualified to do what the only ones that have attended specific training. We handle complaints, drone complaints, with the exception of terrorist acts or prowler type events, as a low priority call, meaning this call would be handled after other more pressing calls are completed. By that time, the offender would most likely be gone. Officers are allowed to clear non-priority, non-life-threatening call and not respond due to time-elapsed issues. It is really up to the officer's discretion. Our department has no budget for this type of training. It will be up to the federal government to assist in funding these training sessions. And this is just a personal opinion of the viewer. He says, I see remote ID going to the wayside like the SEC requirement for a CB license in the 1970s. Hobby operators have nothing to fear in our state. I cannot speak for other jurisdictions, but the law enforcement consensus here is for drones, there's no money to train, low staff levels equals very limited enforcement. So that's a very interesting view from a retired commander in a large California city agency. I think it's worth listening to. Now, the one comment I will offer is when the viewer says, I see remote ID going to the wayside like the FCC requirement for citizen band license in 1970. All of my research, I don't see remote ID going away, because remote ID is foundational to the commercial drone industry for their ultimate goal of full integration of unmanned aircraft with manned aircraft to the national airspace system. The operators, professional operators, see remote ID as just a necessary thing to be done. The problem is recreational drone pilots have been swept up into that. We are going to have to comply with the remote ID in some fashion. I realize there's a lot of things wrong with FRIAs, remote ID modules. However, the drone manufacturers are by and large in compliance with the remote ID. They had to do that December 22nd, 2022. FRIAs, the FAA recognized identification areas, are being authorized. This video is being filmed in mid-July 2023. Our local field here in Georgia has been approved for their FRIAs, so some are coming out. The FAA just hasn't updated their database yet. And the remote ID module is still a work in progress. You can buy them, but at $200, they're way too expensive for everyday modules use. However, it's an interesting discussion from a former police officer, how busy those folks are, prioritization, drone calls where nobody's being threatened, there's no loss of life or injury, are going to be handled on a fairly low priority basis. Thank you for watching this video. I think that was a very interesting, insightful, measured comment by somebody who knows the local law enforcement situation, has to balance budget, personnel, community needs. It's going to be an interesting few years ahead as the integration of drones into the national airspace system continues. Remote ID is the current focus. This is being filmed in July of 2023. A lot more to follow as this interesting new chapter of aviation develops really right in front of our very eyes. Thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you on future videos.